The next section that you really want to have really good is your summary statement. So your headline statement is that very short, bullet pointy, keyword searchable type stuff. The summary statement is more about a summary of who you are. You know, who are you, and a little bit more about you, and from a professional stance once again. And we're going to show some examples at the end of this lesson so you can get a feel for what other people have written, some best practices, and how I would read a summary statement, how I would scan through it. And hopefully that'll help you as far as how to design your own personal summary statement, because of course all this is personal to you. Now, when you have a summary statement, employers are looking at it very quickly. They're looking at many people, just like they would scan a resume or a CV very quickly. They're going to do the same thing with your summary statement. So you want to make it easy to read, easy to scan for both a human and maybe a computer as well. But particularly for a human, make it easy to read. Use bullet points. That can be real helpful to have certain things stand out. Some people do, some people don't. I like bullet points because, again, you know, if they're used judiciously, can really stand out. And you use white space, that there's, you know, space around the words and around the paragraph. So it's not just one long paragraph because you're trying to fit everything in and use up every single character you're allotted by LinkedIn. You want to have white space so it's easy on the eye, again, easy to scan, easy to read. And now with this is not like a cover letter or anything like that. This is really about you. And this is where employers can get a feel for who you are and your voice, how you talk and how you communicate yourself. You might even have a certain personality that you can inject into there. So you have a lot of freedom to express yourself. Obviously, you want to do it in a professional manner. Again, the goal is this is job search. We're hoping to be found so people will recruit us, or that people are evaluating us and vetting us, maybe as we're going through the interview process. So we want to make sure that we're oriented that way from a job search standpoint when we're in that mode. But you have freedom to really express yourself. And it's in a first-person way. You know, we're going to talk about like, I did this, or I really loved that. You know, and not that third person like Tom Smith or Steve Ballinger, duh, Bob. You know, that seems a little weird. Again, this is still part of it. This is social media and expressing yourself and who you are, your voice and who you are. And highlight your successes and strengths. You know, don't be humble about it. Sometimes people are too humble. Talk about those great measurable results. You know, you hit that quota or you deliver that project on time, or some compliments or things from others. Again, we'll have some examples here in a moment, and focus on those things, you know, those successes and strengths. You know, way back when, at the beginning of the course, where we talked about your knowledge, skills, and abilities, and KSAs and all that, this is a part where you weave that stuff in, but then it's part of your story. It's not just a long list of your skills, it's more of storytelling at that point. And remember the goal of everything here with LinkedIn and with this, with your summary statement, and the goal is to get a job, right? You're using this at this point for job search. So this isn't, you know, a whole bunch of thing about how you love cooking. You spend your whole summary statement talking about the different things you cook. You could maybe have a sentence in there, you know, as far as something unique about you is fine. But this is about how do I communicate myself to be more attractive to a potential job employer, somebody who's going to hire me. And so keep it professional focused. Let's look at a couple examples now and read through these. And I'm going to just highlight some examples and how I would read it and how I would scan it. Remember, you know, employers are not going to read it word for word. They're going to first really scan it quickly and move on. Later, they may, for the top candidates, they may read it again, but most likely the first time they're going to interact with it, maybe the first and last time, is a quick scan. So let's look at some examples, and I'll give you some feedback on these examples so you can get a feel for how you want to tailor your customized summary statement. Okay, so in these examples, one thing to apologize for is obviously these summary statements can they're a little bit longer than your top headline statement there, so they can be a little longer. So sorry if the text is a little smaller or whatever. So bear with me on that. But here's an example, and feel free to pause the video too if you want to read this through or scan it yourself. So go ahead and pause the video right now, or in between each of these examples. That's perfectly good. But if I was to just quickly scan Guijo here, Guijo Matthew, I would, some of the things that would stand out for me, and remember, I'm looking at it as a quick scan. I've already looked at his headshot. I've already looked at, okay, he's a chief product officer at VTS. So I've got the idea, okay, he's a chief product officer. See how I got that so quickly just from that headline statement. Now I'm looking at his summary. And so that should match up to that, And a lot of people start with a good, nice opening paragraph or opening statement, about kind of who they are. And I like that about Guizhou's. It says he loves to dig into customer problems and solve them with modern technology, right? So he's a problem solver. He's customer oriented and he's technological, right? So, and then he goes into different things, the scalability and all that. But I'm scanning through, I'm not even reading that. I look at that. He's had executive positions, paragraph 2, that's about all I read. Then I'm reading, I can successfully create, scale, optimize software product portfolios. I got the number range, 5 to 1 billion, great. I might look a little closer now at his bullet points, like, okay, what have you scaled? So, okay, I might want to look in a little more detail on that, but I get it. And I like how he oriented, he can successfully create and scale. And then the next paragraph, I can align, lead, and grow. So he can lead teams, all right, I can get that. I educate and refine and drive myself to be a better person. Okay, he's doing constantly learning and all that. And he can stay calm. So that's some emotional intelligence there, that second bullet point in that 5th paragraph there. Enjoying meeting new people. And then we've got some, you can do this too, where he's listed his professional skills and his domain knowledge, as kind of a, more of a listing type format. And that's good from a keyword search standpoint when people are looking for things like, if you look through his thing, like, I'm looking for someone with user experience or UX design who works with agile development. And you can see, in there, he's got those both in there. So that would stand out. And then you've got the idea of domain knowledge too as well. So it's a nice combination of a nice opening paragraph, some easy to read, easy to scan bullet points in the body, and then listing for keyword search things. So that's one style that you could do. Another one is like this one here with James Allen Hatch. Again, I look first at that and I see he's a senior software engineer at Sling TV. Okay, software engineer, senior guy. Okay, got it. So then I start looking at his summary and I'm going to read that first sentence, usually, first, of course. And it says, first and foremost, I love writing code. All right, so already I got in the thing, this guy's a coder and he loves writing code, right? So if I hire somebody to code, I get like, okay, he's a pro and he loves writing code. And you could keep reading a little bit, like, ever since writing his first program in Python and manipulating it and how he loved doing that, and the software engineering is a never-ending puzzle and he's passionate about it, like, great. And then he goes a little bit into his history, a little bit telling his story. His first professional contract, UI and UX overhaul of a small startup's website. And then he moved on. Now it's telling that story. I moved from that onto HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Okay. And then that turned into a full-time offer. So he must have been pretty good. And what he does today with Sling TV as a senior engineer. And then he's doing some micro front-end stuff. See, I'm really scanning through this. And then even when I leave the office, I tend to continue writing code at the house. This is the start of the 3rd paragraph. See how I'm just really glancing through this? Maybe you're doing the same thing. Again, pause the video if you want to look at this closer. Sorry for the size. But there's a guy who I would look at and say, the guy loves the code. He loves the code. He's got his work on a website for his band, Kaleidoscope. I might go check out his band. And he plays the synthesizer, so I learn a little in piano, so I learn a little bit about him. And that's kind of nice, right? So I've got this story. So if I was to look at James' story, I would say, guy loves to write code. He loves to crazily write code at home for fun. He writes code and works on websites for his bands. And he's got this nice, pattern of experience too. So that's a nice little story he's told there about him. But again, it's his professional story. I'm sure he works a little bit about his band and Kaleidoscope, but this is really his professional story. And even his personal thing works into how he's using his professional experience, website development, for his personal life, because the guy loves the code. And then lastly here, this will be the 3rd one, the last one here. Again, pause if you like. This is Eliza, product marketing and growth at SurveyMonkey. And so she starts off with kind of an interesting thing that makes you want to read further, right? The human brain is a crazy place. There are 2 things that fascinate me most about product and growth marketing. Okay, there's 2 things. I know there's 2 things coming up. I can jump right to the 2 things. And I'm like, okay, it's crazy. What's fascinating to you? I'm curious. What is fascinating to you? First, it's the concept of consumer logic. And then she writes, and second, see how she did first and second? That's a good way to write. So it's easy for me to find what's the first thing. Consumer logic. What's the second thing? Challenge of communicating in a way that persuades and convinces consumers, and optimization around that. All right. So she's fascinated by consumer and consumer buying patterns and also the optimization of that. Something you might want in a product marketing and growth person, right? If I'm looking for that type of job, and that's kind of who she is. And so she says that in their 2nd paragraph, how she applies that thinking to product marketing and in leadership. And so she's sharing her product marketing and her leadership. So I'm glancing through that. And it talks a little bit about some of her experience and talks about how she built and led the demand generation marketing team. So she's got some leadership there, built a team, bringing 7 new products to market. Okay, that's the stuff I'm looking for now as far as really skill stuff. Prior to joining SurveyMonkey, and then she works at SurveyMonkey. And then she works in some personal stuff. If you've got some volunteer things especially, this is a good part at the end where you can work it in, and again, connect it to your job or things that might relate to that. So she's on the board of directors for Women in Tech, right? So that's great. And what that organization does in helping women succeed in Silicon Valley. And she coaches, girls. So she's very oriented in girls and women type organizations. And so she does some things around that. And she throws in a little thing like does some painting. She's got Elisa Artworks. So that's a little bit more if I want to see about her as a painter. They won't necessarily help sell her to me as far as her getting a job, maybe as a product marketer, but I might be interested just to learn more about her and check out her website. Again, you could have a personal website if you wanted to that's more job oriented, but you can, also have a personal one for, your artwork or some things too, or sharing things on social media. Check out my Facebook page for more on my artwork or whatever it might be. And that, a little thing about flavor of things, whatever. So it gets a little bit much there. I may tighten that up a little bit. But anyways, you still get a feel for who she is. And it's, again, all professional based with a little bit thrown in at the end with some personal board of directors type stuff is leadership. That ties into what she was talking about earlier. Women technology, she's into technology. Her position is technology based. So it goes a little bit more into that as well. So the big takeaway from all this section is that your summary is in the first person. It's talking about what you do. I did this in your voice. I did this, and how it links together with your headline statement, and it starts to tell that story about who you are. And then people are now they're going to jump pretty quickly from your summary right into your work experience and these other things because they're checking boxes. So they're looking from a hiring manager standpoint. So, use these examples and create and continue to craft your summary statement because it's very important. It also helps in keyword search too, so that can help as well.